Hey guys, CMan235, and it's been a while. I know it's like been a week since the YouTube Heroes video, but that was just a sort of off the wall thing because YouTube had to do something stupid again. But regardless, I said I was gonna do this a while ago, and the reason it took so long was because I sort of wanted a break, mostly from YouTube, mainly because of some of the shit that was going on with the site. And it was just like, you guys are stupid, why are you doing this to your own site? Plus, I was, real life stuff, so. But another reason why was because I wasn't really sure how to tackle this retrospective, because this is going to be the first Let's Talk without a friend nearby to help me out with that. I mean, I've done videos by myself before, but Let's Talks I usually bring someone else in because they can offer a different perspective or just make shitty jokes as Zach usually does. I would like to bring other people on it, but I don't really know anyone else who wants to do that, so maybe one day if I can get someone on Lightstep or something. Regardless, I've been wanting to do this retrospective for a while, and it's the Pokemon retrospective. Pokemon is celebrating its 20th anniversary. It's been celebrating its 20th anniversary. And it's gonna have Sun and Moon is gonna come out sometime next month. So I'm really excited for that because Sun and Moon looks good. And I will be doing an impressions video on that. Either an impressions video or I'll talk about it in my 2016 in gaming review, or not in gaming, but in year review, where I talk about the movies and the games and TV seasons that I've seen. So one of those two. And with Pokemon Sun and Moon, I am really excited for it, but I want to talk about the other Pokemon games that I have played. I haven't played all of the main games. I might make a video for some of the spin-offs, but for right now, and you know, of course, for other things like the trading card game and the anime. But when it comes to the main games, I haven't played all of them, but I'm gonna just mainly stick to these. Otherwise, this video would probably go over the 3-hour marker, and I'd rather not edit a 3-hour video. It's a nightmare to edit. So, I got into Pokemon around 2008, 2009. That was when Platinum was actually being released. Or maybe after it was released, I'm not sure. Regardless, that was around the time I got my own DS, and I actually played Platinum. I actually got Platinum, but I didn't really get into it much. Before then, I was actually playing Pokemon games that I borrowed from someone. My brother was actually in a relationship with someone, and she had a kid who was playing Pokemon, and so, you know, I borrowed some of his games with, of course, his permission, because he had a Game Boy Advance, and I never really spent any time with any handheld device at all. Now I play them all the time, but before then, it's like, no, I haven't really done anything with something like that before. You know, eventually I had to give it back to him, but I played Gold and Silver, the original, not completely though. I only got past the first gym, not because it was hard, but because I kept having to give the game back to him for whatever reason. And I also played Sapphire, and Sapphire was sort of what drew me to the series. It got me interested in it. But I didn't really play I got around 4 badges before I stopped near the midway point because all the surfing was introduced and I got a little annoyed with it. Eventually, I got my own DS and I sort of forgot about Sapphire until later on when I went to transfer my Blaziken, which I still have in my Omega Ruby to this day. So eventually, I got Platinum and my own DS, and I didn't spend much time with Platinum, mostly because Heart Gold and Soul Silver at that time was released. And I wanted that now because I was a greedy little whore. So, so I played Pokemon Soul Silver, and that was the game that really got me into Pokemon, and I've been a Pokemon fan ever since. I played Black and White and Black and White 2, which is my favorite generation. I'll talk about why later on. And, you know, I played X and Y, Omega Ruby. I went back to some of the older games. I actually went back to play Pokemon Blue on the original Game Boy Color, on an actual Game Boy Color. And then I of course played Yellow when it came out on the Virtual Console. You know, I played some more of the spin-offs. I go to the events. There's a it's one of the new Pokemon. I forget what it's called, but it's a new Pokemon. It's the Fire Water type Pokemon. It's going to be a mythical Pokemon that's released tomorrow, actually. So now you know when this is recorded, maybe. So, yeah, that was how I got into Pokemon, by experimenting with a couple of the games, and Heart Gold Soul Silver was where I got my start on it, mainly because I became a Pokemon fan with that game because I was playing with other people. I had friends who were into Pokemon around the time of middle school, and because of that, I played Pokemon a lot with them. So, I also had an action replay, of course, and, you know, I used that to get some of the event Pokemon, like Arceus, and Darkrai, and Shaman, and Manaphy. You know, the useless legendaries with the exception of Darkrai and Arceus. Darkrai and Arceus are actually kind of cool, I like them, so I just don't really care for Shaman and Manaphy. They're just kind of, they're okay. They're there. They're mythical Pokemon, I guess. So with that said, that's how I got my start into the series. So let's start by actually talking about some of the games now. Let's start with Generation 1, because it's the first generation. So I played Pokemon, the most recent time I played Generation 1 was obviously this year when it came out on the Virtual Console, but before then I played Pokemon Blue. And back then I really enjoyed it because I finally got a grasp on the Pokemon games, and I got good at them, because by that point I played Soul Silver, and I was just getting into Black and White because I was following I was following the news that came from Black and White. So, because of that, I went back to play Pokemon Blue for in the time being, just to see how the series began, and I enjoyed it at that time. Going back to the Virtual Console release, though, really put a hamper on my enjoyment of the game. And we all heard the stories. We know how broken Generation 1 actually is. There's like at least 3 or 4 lists of problems of like the bugs and glitches and some of the messy mechanics of Generation 1. How technically messy it is, mainly because it's such an old game, and it was the first time they really did something like that. At least to that scale. So yeah, I don't really go back to Gen 1 that much. There was a time where I actually wanted to get all 3 on Virtual Console and complete the Pokédex, but I don't think I'm gonna do that now. Maybe one day, not now. So, you know, I played Pokemon Yellow on the Virtual Console recently, and it was really kind of hard for me to get back into the original generation because of that. I still think it is, like, if you're just playing it on a casual level, while it is really easy because of those broken mechanics, if you know how to break the game, it's really, really piss easy, but I still think it's a fun game to go back to, just to see how the series began, and it's nice that it's on the Virtual Console now, so anyone can really play it, without having to worry about the battery going dead. You know, because there was the save battery. It always went. When it goes dead, you're essentially you have a dead game. You can't save it all. So, and that's kind of annoying considering that Pokemon is at least like a 10 to 20 hour plus game. When it comes to Generation 1, I honestly don't really have too many memories with it, mostly because I played to completion. I did the Mew glitch. That was the thing I probably remember the most, because during my original playthrough of Blue, I actually cheated and used the Mew glitch. So I used Mew for the entire game, because I figured why the fuck not. So when it came to Generation 1, though, I wasn't there during the original hype, so I'm sorry if I'm kind of just skimming over it. It's just because I don't have many memories with it. Like, and honestly, if you really want me to go over, like, the problems of Gen 1, you can just go look up a list of all of the problems that people have with Generation 1 and all the mechanic issues, so I don't really think I need to touch on that. Just on to Generation 2, I never actually played much of the original Gold and Silver. I want them to release it on Virtual Console eventually, just so I can play it more, but the version of Gold and Silver that I played the most was obviously Heart Gold Soul Silver. The version I played of Generation 2 was obviously Heart Gold Soul Silver, and I loved it. I loved all the things it added from the original Generation 2. I loved going through Johto and Kanto, since they actually have 2 regions. I'll talk about that in a minute. And what I really loved about Heart Gold Soul Silver was not just because it was playing with friends, though that was a big reason for it, but there was so much to do in Heart Gold Soul Silver. I do have some issues with it, because I actually got Soul Silver again. You see, I actually bought Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I bought Heart Gold at a later time, and I gave it to my friend because I really just wanted it so I could get the Pokewalker, because mine was lost, I think. I lost my old one, and eventually that one broke on me, or it's out of batteries, one of the two. Regardless, it doesn't work. And, I spent a little bit of time with the Pokewalker. I'll talk about that later on as well, but let me get my issues with the game out of the way. First off, it's fucking expensive. Now, that's not really the fault of the game, that's more inflation and stuff. People just selling it for absurd prices online, but like, I spent essentially $50 getting Soul Silver back, and I don't think I'm getting a Heart Gold anytime soon. So, that was annoying. The real problems with Heart Gold Soul Silver are actually some that were in the original game on the Game Boy Color, and one of the other problems was with Generation 4 and its battle mechanics in general. I didn't play much of Gen 4, specifically Platinum. I actually cheated most of my way through the game just so I could get the Arceus event and the Shaman event and stuff like that. So you had to beat the game in order to do it. But at the same time, by God, there were some problems with Gen 4, specifically how slow the battles were. I'm not sure if it was loading or what was going on. If it was loading the animations and it was just taking a while, but the game loaded so slow. It was so slow compared to the other Pokemon games. It wasn't noticeable when I played them, but it was noticeable going back, considering how much faster Gen 5 and 6 actually are. And that was really hard to sit through. Another thing was that was grinding in Heart Gold Soul Silver was nearly impossible by the end point of Johto. You had the 6 Pokemon, you keep those 6 Pokemon. Unless they're legendaries, you can use the legendaries because they're at a reasonably high level, but for that point in the game. But if you didn't have like, let's say I had the 6 Pokemon I wanted to use. Let's say I wanted to use a different Pokemon, like Tyranitar, which you get very late in the game. Well, that'd be great to use, but unfortunately, you're at a point in the game where grinding is a near impossibility, so really, it's not even worth it. And that was the big problem with Heart Gold Soul Silver. You had the 6 Pokemon you wanted to use, you used those for the rest of the damn game. Or you can use legendaries. That was the only exception, and I used legendaries to make the game easier. But even I'll admit, the level, if they made grinding more efficient, it would be nice, which is something I think Gen 5 and 6 fixed heavily. And that was the big issue. Heart Gold Soul Silver fixed a lot of issues with the original game, but that was one of the things it didn't, and it really should have, since that was one of the biggest issues. But I love that they added the Safari Zone back in. That was my first Safari Zone experience, actually, and by God, was it a bad one. But regardless, I still love the Safari Zone. It was a fun mode to go through. I like how you can actually customize the Safari Zone, too. That's something I don't think you could do in some of the other games. I love how they added some of the dungeons back from the original first generation. I love how they added back the legendaries like Moltres, Zapdos, Articuno, and Mewtwo. I love that they added the Hoenn Pokemon, like the starters you could get from Steven, the champion from the original Gen 3. And they also added Kyogre and Groudon and Rayquaza, or Rayquaza. I call it Rayquaza. I think Rayquaza is the correct pronunciation, but fuck do I know. I think it's Rayquaza. I love all the things they added. I love some of the additional areas, and it was so much fun to go through. And I love the fact that there was 2 regions. That's something that they never did again, and that's something that I wish they would do again. Like, I'm really hoping, I know this is probably a pipe dream, but I'm really hoping that when Sun and Moon comes out, I'm hoping, since the Zygarde forms are kind of going to be a big thing, I'm really hoping that Sun and Moon actually have Kalos in there. I know it's like, I don't think it's gonna happen. It's not a technical impossibility. The 3DS has a lot of memory. I'm sure they could do it if they try, but I don't think it's gonna happen. It would be nice if it would, though. Another thing is, I would like it if they go, like, instead of, like, remaking the generations, and I don't get me wrong, I have no problem with the remakes, because really all of the remakes have been really good. Like, I heard Fire Red and Leaf Green were great. I haven't played them. I've played Heart Gold Soul Silver, and it was really, really good. And then there was Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, which was also really good. Maybe not as good as Heart Gold Soul Silver, but it was still pretty damn impressive for what it fixed from the original Gen 3, and it's definitely up there as one of my favorite games in the series, which is impressive because I went back to Gen 3 a while ago, a long while ago, years ago, and I didn't like it as much because of the surfing, but they surprisingly managed to fix a lot of what Gen 3 had problems with. Some, anyway. But yeah, when it comes to their remakes, I have no problem with them, but instead of, like, now that we're at a point where the games really don't need to be remade anymore, like, I would like it, instead of them remaking, say, Gen 6 or Gen 4 or Gen 5, while I would definitely like remakes of those games, I would rather have it to where they just add those regions into the new generations. I would personally like a game with all of the regions, but I know that's like a fucking pipe dream. I know that's never gonna fucking happen. So instead, what I would like is maybe they add an extra region after you beat the main game that you can go to, and that would be something that's really cool. Johto was the only one to do that, which makes it stand out. It has the most fun world to explore. Personally, I think that Unova is a better world, just because of what they did with that world, and I'll talk about Gen 5 later on, and why I love it so much. But Kanto and Johto came the closest to being the most interesting world if it weren't for Gen 5, because it has 2 regions. You can explore 2 regions. And that was really cool. And one thing that Heart Gold Soul Silver also had is that it also had personality. Not to say that the world around world of Pokemon doesn't have personality, but I will admit that sometimes in the games, especially as they went on, they've gotten blander when it came to the characters. Like, you always have a stereotypical rival. You always have someone who tags along with you that isn't a rival. Sometimes the rival can either be a nice rival, a hyperactive rival, or just an outright douchebag like Blue, who I really liked was a gym leader in Heart Gold Soul Silver. You always had those sort of stereotypical roles that Pokemon fulfill. Like, Pokemon followed a very standard formula that they've sort of ripped off for every generation and rarely put a new spin on it. I think the only time they ever put a spin on it before Generation 5 came around was you fought Red at the end of the game. Your character from the first generation, you fought you from that first game, and that was a really cool... Red is one of my favorite final boss fights in any game because of it. I love how epic they actually did make the fight. I love the soundtrack, I love the atmosphere, and I love how tense the battle is. I love how balanced his team actually was. I hate the fact that they added Hail in Heart Gold Soul Silver. Fuck that. But besides that, they followed mostly a standard formula, and not that it's a bad thing, but they've reused it so many damn times. Like, you're an 11-year-old, you're a 10-year-old, whatever age you are, you kick the shit out of gym leaders that for some reason have the bright idea to use the same type of Pokemon. Oh, and stop a terrorist organization, because you can do that too. Because you're a 10-year-old, you can do anything. So, they've sort of done so many times, and I don't mind that, but I would like it if they added personality into the world. I don't need a Pokemon game to have a grand story. If it has characters that I like and has personality, then I will enjoy I will enjoy the game, maybe not for its story, but for the characters themselves. Because that's one thing, is that Heart Gold Soul Silver did have personality. Like, you remember the rival. Silver is a great example of this. Silver is a complete asshole, like, when you start him in the game. He shoves you when you try and talk to him, he steals a Pokemon, claims he's gonna be the best trainer, and gets his ass whooped at least 7 or 8 times before he finally gets the idea that you're never gonna be better than him, as long as you treat your Pokemon like essentially an asshole. And over time, he starts to become nicer with his Pokemon. He starts to care about them more. He starts to learn what it truly means to be a Pokemon trainer. They even show this with Crobat, who only evolves from a Golbat if it's happy enough with its trainer. Really, really smart symbolism there. I like that. It's just they really, really clever. But it's not that much character development, but it's enough to give him a personality. He's a character. And there are other people even though people say Claire's a bitch, and she is, I love the fact that she was so distraught over losing that she didn't give you the gym badge. You actually had to do something else because she was just whining so much that she couldn't lose. It was charming, it was funny, and yeah, okay, yeah, she's a bitch for doing that, but, you know, it was funny. And not every character was like that, but there was personality in Johto, and kind of in Kanto. I like how some of the gym leaders in Kanto have grown and have grown up, and they're a bit different now. I like how there are some new gym leaders. I like how Koga is actually an Elite Four member now, and his daughter actually took over his gym, mainly because you know, he ranked up. He stepped up his game, which is surprising because he's using one of the worst types in the game. So it was nice to see the world expanding. It was nice to see characters growing, and that's something that other Pokemon games kind of have a hard time with. Not all of them. There are some that do it well, but it's something that Generation 2 had over other generations besides Gen 5 and maybe Gen 6 with Omega Ruby. I'm still debating whether Gen 6 X and Y actually did it. Anyway, you know, I think I've gushed about Heart Gold and Soul Silver enough, so let's move on to Generation 3.